What's kicking y'all? Quick Panic here, and I am back with another Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links video, but today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've got my buddy Pizzy on the, not on Skype, on the phone. Let's just say he's on the phone. Say hi.
Hello.
So, Pizzy and I have been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Together for like a zillion years. I think it's like 2008, right? So like almost a decade.
Yeah.
So,
I was about to say 2008.
yeah, 2008, somewhere around there, somewhere around Dark Arm Dragon times. And so he and I have both been playing a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links in the past year since it's come out. And we've both made it to King of Games. We're playing in the KC Cup. And, you know, a lot of what happens in regular Yu-Gi-Oh! Is you do a lot of theorizing. And, you know, that's kind of missing in the Duel Links community. So he had this great idea that we would record a couple videos, maybe make it a series where we just talk about like TheoryOh, but Duel Links style. And I think it's become even more necessary right now because you have people like Guns Blazing and Duel Links Meta and Shady Penguin who are playing, and they're awesome content creators, but they feel like the game is dead and they're kind of petering off a little bit. And I can understand why. Like, you have formats where you're playing against the same two decks. I mean, Pizzy has done the same thing with me, like where you have like 2 or 3 decks that you have to choose from. And if you want to do well, you have to play one of them. And it's not fun. I can understand. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about that. So the consensus, the quote unquote consensus, is that Duel Links is dead. But we're here to tell you why it's not. And talk a little bit about the format and the future of it. So we played in KC Cup, and that was like the epitome of all of the metagame that you'll play. So what was your experience for KC Cup, just overall, how you felt about it, what you played against, and what you think about the health of a game when it has maybe like 3 or 4 decks that you can play from?
So when I played in KC Cup earlier this year, in like February, I think is when the first one was.
Yeah.
The format was pretty much you played Cyber Angel or you just lost. Like, it didn't matter what other deck you brought to the table. It just wasn't going to outpace the consistency of any Cyber Angel player. So when we went into this KC, Sylvans and other decks like that, they had just released the mini pack, Rampage of the Forest, which introduced Sylvans into the metagame, and then they released Valiant Souls, which brought Gear and Mass Hero. So I tried playing Cyber Angel at first, and let me tell you, I was getting absolutely crushed constantly because
Yeah.
unless basically if you didn't go second and kill them on the second turn, then you pretty much lost because they would just outpace you after that. But after I switched to Sylvan, I just never lost. The only problem I ran into was Masked Hero, because Masked Hero has the ability to just kill Sylvan through a Kushmaro flip because they were running triple Chalice in the main. And so, other than that, Sylvan was by far the best deck. I played against Sylvan, I played against Masked Hero, I played against Gear, I played against some sub-tier decks like Archfiends, Aliens. I know that Sea Stealth Attack was a deck going into KP that I thought was going to be really, really relevant, and it really, really wasn't. So, I mean, I enjoyed playing KC a lot more this time around because it was a lot more, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Creativity, as opposed to just, you need to play against Cyber Angel and lose, or... You know,
yeah, it was a little bit more diverse. So I think that was pretty cool when we have 2 packs that drop like that introduce new archetypes. I mean, realistically, you chose either Masked Heroes or you played Sylvans. I think those are like the top. Would you agree?
Yeah, but I mean, you could still play Cyber Angel. Like,
yeah,
Cyber
you could
Angel,
still play it, definitely.
Yeah, Cyber Angel has an incredible Sylvan matchup because they can't use the tech cards like Ultimate Providence or Tribute to the Doomed on any of your Cyber Angel cards because of your field spell. Well, Dakani's on Chainlink 1 and then Ends on Chainlink 2, so they can't even Ultimate Providence or Dakani, so that just kills your flip. And then if you try to do things like Tribute to the Doom, their monsters on the board, they just remove the ritual spells from the graveyard, so it gives you issues. But I mean, Cyber Angel has no matchup against Heroes. I think Heroes is just infinitely better than that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. And you know, the benefit of playing Cyber Angel during the KC Cup is that you basically gave your opponent 1 turn. And sometimes when you're playing Sylvan, it requires maybe 2 turns to set up. If you go second and you have a Kolmashrumo in your hand and that's your milling card, like, that's going to take another turn to set up. That's you can't get it going with just Martial Leaf. Sometimes you can get it going if you get really lucky off a Martial Leaf, mill a Rose Lover, then get to banish it for Guardy Oak or something like that. But that's not a consistent opening. So Cyber Angel definitely has a faster, harder starting. And if you don't draw the counter to it, you definitely lose to it. You have Dakini, who has the ridiculous piercing, and you have Ida who boosts everything by 1,000. So you have a 3,700 attack piercer who's netting you a card at the end phase and is sending a card when it hits the field, not destroying, setting. And then you have that protection that's built in the graveyard with the ritual spell. So I totally agree. Cyber Angel was viable, but you just didn't see a whole lot of it. And I think that's because we've spent months and months playing Cyber Angels, and getting these new decks was kind of fun. I think it was kind of fun. Everybody's saying that it's like you can't even say this is pay to win anymore, because all you need is 3 Komoshrumo are super rares, and you grind for the Rose Lovers. So
yeah, and everything else is rare.
Yeah, and everything else is rare. Like it's I don't know. I think this was an easy format to compete in. It's not. I can understand why they're upset that playing Sylvans was almost mandatory for the quote unquote free to play player. But you also had the option of doing Masked Heroes if you spent some money on the game, because you needed those 3 ultra rares. So I can understand why people are upset. But this is not the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! This happens in regular Yu-Gi-Oh! This happens almost every year. Like, we had Zodiac was almost tier 0, and then you had the introduction of True Draco, which kind of like stomped on it. Then you have Trickstars, and like you have this evolution of formats. Well, Trickstars was way after, but I think that we're going to see that here in Duel Links, and that brings me to my next bullet point here. Is we have a new pack that's dropping. Do you know the name of it, Pizzy?
It's called Frozen Ice, I think.
Frozen something. Anyway, the point of this is that we have spellbook cards coming out, and if you're not...
Visions of Ice, sorry.
What was it?
Visions of Ice.
Visions of Ice?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So,
and it just dropped right now.
Oh, sweet. I told you it was 7. Anyway, so we have this new pack that's dropping, and it's awesome because it has spellbooks in it. And if you don't know what spellbooks are, because you play Duel Links and you haven't played TCG Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's like a pretty big deal. Spellbooks are a fan favorite, and they also have this awesome way of generating advantage and maintaining advantage, which I think a lot of the decks right now have a real issue doing, and that's why they can't compete with stuff like Sylvan, which lives from the graveyard. You have like a Rose Lover or a Carrot that you can just access at any time. That makes a huge difference. You have Celestial and Masked Hero, and I think being able to play from the graveyard after you've used these cards is a huge deal. And spellbooks kind of play off the fact that they still maintain advantage, not through the graveyard, but they keep something in your hand all the time. You have Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, which nets you a spellbook card on summon. You have Spellbook of Secrets, which tutors another spellbook card from your deck. And these cards are setting up cards like Spellbook of Fates, which is a disruptor card, which I mean, I don't think we have anything like that. It's a quick play disruption card that doesn't target, and it banishes whatever you're getting rid of. So, I mean, what do you think about the applications of that? Like, what do you think we can do with it? Because we don't have anything but Spellbook Magician of Prophecy coming out here. We don't have Temperance. We don't have The World. We don't have Priestess. So what do you foresee us mixing spellbooks with? Because I definitely think it'll make a splash in the meta.
So a quick point on the set that I wanted to make when I saw the set list that came out. I think the best card in this entire box is actually Treacherous Trap Hole, because it gives you like multiple monster destruction, and a lot of the meta decks now aren't even running traps in them. So for example, like say you open with like you're playing Cyber Angels and you open a Treacherous and like no way to go off on your opponent, or you're just going first so you don't want to go off. You literally just set Treacherous, and then your opponent tries to do something and you disrupt it with Treacherous Trap Hole, and then you can go off on them on the next turn. I thought Treacherous Trap Hole coming out was really interesting.
Yes, no, I totally agree with you. I saw that, and I had the same feeling.
Yeah, but to answer your question about Prophecy, I'm kind of happy they didn't release any of the broken Prophecy monsters, because then it would just make Duel Links like a really unfair game to play Prophecy. But they released cards like Prophecy Destroyer and Reaper of Prophecy, and like to me, you're gonna be able to use those cards to make like cute little Dark Magician combo decks.
Yeah,
because Reaper of Prophecy can special Dark Magician from the deck, which is really interesting. And they also released the Tricky in the set, and I mean, so you can do cute things like discard a dead spellbook card in your hand to spellbook or to special summon Tricky, and then like banish it for Prophecy Destroyer. I mean, I'm not 100% sure what kind of cute combos people are going to figure out with Prophecy, but I think that it'll actually be like a semi-relevant deck just because Spellbook of Fate is such a good quick play spell, and it doesn't target and it banishes. And like the biggest problem with playing against a deck like Sylvan's is if they set a monster, you have no way of knowing if that's Kushmara or Rose Lover, and you never want to attack it to find out. So if you have cards like Spellbook of Fate, you just remove
Yep. Problem
face down
solved.
monster. No problem. Bye. See you later.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I think Dark Magician is a good point. I think the synergy that the deck naturally has with all the spellbook cards is going to be a big deal. Also, coupled with the fact that spellbooks will add that deck thinning to the deck that Dark Magician didn't really. Well, I guess it kind of had it, but it makes it faster. It does a lot of more deck thinning, and it has things that can deal with monsters in the form of Spellbook of Fates, which is reactive. You can just set it. It's a quick play, activate it during your opponent's turn, so it's better than Thousand Knives, obviously. Thousand Knives also destroys, and Banishing is always like infinitely better. So
especially no cards are the only cards that were no, they don't even have the what is that trap deck called? Paleo. They don't have the Paleo trap that returns banished. So yeah, there's no way to get cards back from banished.
Yep, that's the end of it. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see that happen here. I guess starting today, we have the set that dropped. So I'll be interested to go over that. Actually, I'm just going to pull it up here real quick. I have Duel Links on the screen. I was just kind of like auto dueling while we talked, but let's look at the set. Treacherous Trap Hole is something that I totally forgot. Definitely something that stood out initially. And I agree with you that it's going to be a big deal because Sylvans were playing like 2 traps maybe if they were playing Providence. But we're not really using a whole lot of traps in the meta right now just because it's the meta's too fast.
No, you need to be able to activate them from your hand.
Yep, exactly. So Mage Power, that's not going to matter at all. But we have Spellbook of Life. I didn't even realize that was one of the spellbooks coming out. So you have Graveyard Recursion, which is really cool. Spellbook of Secrets, we already talked about. That's deck thinning. Blue Boy. Sorry, I've always called him Blue Boy. I realize he's Spellbook Magician.
Magician of Prophecy, yeah.
There he is. He's a super rare. Okay, so, I mean, this might be a little bit pay to win. Treacherous Trap Hole is also super. Looks like the relevant spellbooks are all supers. But the Ultras are the Tricky and White Knight Dragon, which is a really weird choice. So, I don't know. I feel like this is going to be a big deal.
I feel like the Tricky is going to end up popping up in a lot of meta decks like Archfiends, and you can even play it in Sylvan. Like it's like just a card that's
true. It's 2,000 attack. So, it's 2,000 attack. That's half of your opponent's life points. So if you have a Tricky in your hand, discard a Rose Lover and special summon Tricky, banish the Rose Lover for Hermitry or YuGiOh, that's game. That's if they don't have anything on the field. And we know Sphere Karibo has fallen off the map a little bit. You don't see a whole lot of that anymore.
Only in Archfiends.
Only in Archfiends because it's a fiend. Looks like we got some Gustos, but I don't think that's going to have any sort of relevant effects on the meta. I think the real things we're looking at here are all of the Prophecy cards. We have some ice stuff in here. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't know if you have it up, but
I do indeed. I'm looking at it.
I don't really think there's a whole lot more. Spellbook of Fate is a rare. That's awesome.
No, like the thing is that since they just released all the key pieces to spellbooks, but not any big monsters, the only way you're going to see any spellbook decks when you're playing on ladder is if you're playing against some sort of Dark Magician mix.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting for someone to figure out a consistent build with spellbooks and Dark Magician, because I feel like if you open with one part or the other, it's just gonna like be bricky. Like you have to open all spell books and like a dark magic curtain for it to be good. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with it.
Well, we just got another skilled dark magician from Arcana's level 45. So that I think that's kind of a big deal. It's a 1900 spellcaster. That's like nothing to laugh at by any means. But he's also gathering spell counters, so you can send him for dark magician. So you're activating spellbook of Secrets. You're activating spellbook of Power. All these. And
Crescent.
What was that?
Crescent.
Yep, Crescent, Fate. Like you're activating all these spell cards during your turn, and all you have to do is summon Skilled Dark Magician first, and you can pop him off with 3 spell counters. So I don't know, man. Like it sounds like you're setting up your spellbook plays and your Dark Magician plays. I don't know. I'm excited to start messing around with it. I think that's going to be a really good deck, really powerful deck.
Man, the more I look at it, the more I realize that like the release of Tricky and Treacherous is just like not good for Yu-Gi-Oh, not for Duel Links.
Treacherous is, man. So the thing with Treacherous, if you're not familiar with it, you have to have no trap cards in your graveyard to activate it, but you get to destroy 2 monsters on the field, right? Yep, just on the field. Doesn't matter who. So if your opponent gets somebody that's really beefy and you want to pop your own, go for it to get rid of the other one. I think
I'll happily pop my Rose Lover to pop my opponent's monster.
Well, speaking of Rose Lover, the popularity of Rose Lover kind of makes it hard. Like, if your opponent Rose Lover's out a YuGiOh, you can't Tretch or Sit because it's unaffected by trap cards for the turn. I think this is a super counter to YuGiOh.
The thing is with YuGiOh is everyone thinks that it's like this easy to build like budget deck, but the version that I lost to the most when I was playing in KC was one that ran triple Pulse Mine, and the only way you got Pulse Mine is if you grind it against Espa. So I think that YuGiOh is a deck that's going to be around for a while when all these other decks fade away, because with Ties of the Brethren and stuff like that, it makes YuGiOh a really consistent deck, and being able to flip over and disrupt all of your opponent's plays by like popping stuff on the field is just frustrating.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why I'm really surprised it didn't do better against Mass Hero, because literally if you open Ties of the Brethren and Arsenal, like, and anything that flips over any of your guys, like any deck will struggle against all of that disruption.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. YuGiOh is kind of reminiscent of what Dinos were with Rex Raptor, just because you have a bunch of beaters and a bunch of back row. And that's really hard to deal with. And the fact that YuGiOh does it better, like you literally have to open up one YuGiOh monster and Ties the Brethren, and your whole front field is filled with disrupting monsters. And I don't know, that still leaves 2 cards in hand if you're going first, 3 cards in hand if you're going second. And I mean, those are probably Pulse Mines or Windstorm, Curse of Anubis, whatever. Enemy Controller.
Self-absorbing whatever trap.
Which one?
The flip all of them over and you gain 300 for each effect monster.
Yeah. I mean, there are just so many things that we can do here. So I'm excited about Duel Links. You guys, let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the future of Duel Links. A lot of people are saying it's dead, but I see a lot of potential for the game to evolve again. I mean, would you consider this a power creep with spellbooks coming out? You talked about Tricky. I don't know if that's a power creep.
I feel like unless there's another main box drop before Worlds, which I guess there could be because they've been on a pace of releasing a box every 3 or so weeks. If they release another archetype that can deal with the big 4, as I'm calling them, then we could see a shakeup for the Worlds format. But outside of a main box drop, I don't think that Prophecy will be relevant enough to like interrupt what the best decks are, which is Cyber Angel, Sylvan, Mass Hero, and YuGiOh. I mean, people keep trying to play Archfiends and push that into Tier 1, but it's just not consistent enough to deal with these decks that are incredibly consistent.
I mean, the best way to play Archfiends right now is milling, and you can never rely on a mill deck to be 100%. Sylvan's, I guess, technically is a mill deck, but you don't get rid of your spells and traps and non-plant monsters. Those go back into the deck, and everything that gets milled nets you an effect. So
I don't think it's that as much as even like the 4 decks can all kill you in the second turn. Like if you don't do anything to them, they can literally just turn around and beat you in the second turn that they go.
Yeah.
So Archfiends needs like a turn or two. Like
it needs a turn at least to set up.
Yeah, if Archfiends came out like 4 or 5 months ago, Archfiends would have been an incredible deck to play on ladder.
Kidding.
But like since you have all these decks that can just like pop back rows and pop monsters and like just remove stuff off the field constantly, it's not strong enough to deal with these top 4 decks.
Yeah.
But I mean, I want Prophecy to be good. I played Prophecy for a long time in like the card game, but I just don't see any consistent build where you can like grab so much control with the spellbook engine that you can prevent your opponent from just beating you.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you're not gonna be able to play any like real monster negating cards outside of maybe Ultimate Providence if you want to, and Forbidden Chalice. So if we had a spellcaster like Jowgen like we did in the TCG, then it'd be a lot different. But since we don't, then it's just not going to be as good.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I guess what made spellbooks good in the TCG was that it was like the whole deck was a floodgate. Like you had to have a blaster in order to get rid of Jowgen in order to play, or you had to get rid of Kaiku so you could banish dragons from the graveyard, special summon from your hand. So
even post dragons, like it was still a relevant deck because they still had the consistency of summoning Blue Boy and going through 6 to 7 spellbook cards in your deck and then setting Fate, and it was still disruptive enough for most decks not to deal with it. So
yeah, well, I mean, spellbooks is still relevant right now if you're playing in the TCG, because we have Invoked can tech the spellbook Magician of Prophecy and secrets, and then what's the draw card? I don't even remember.
Knowledge.
Knowledge.
Spellbook of knowledge.
Knowledge. So Spellbook of Knowledge, which we didn't get in here, which is draw a card. That would have been way too much, I think, for Duel Links.
Yep. For a 20-card deck, way too much.
I'm just really excited about Spellbooks coming. So that's what's keeping it fresh for me. A lot of people think it's dying. What is your take on Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links maybe dying, going the way of, quote unquote, going the way of TCG?
I mean, when I first started playing it, I had that feeling as well because generally the community was really sick of Cyber Angels because it was just, that was the only way you got the King of Games was by playing Cyber Angels. And the only way really to get a full Cyber Angel deck was to invest a lot of money and time into it. And so I thought it was, and then they've been really consistent with pushing new content, new cards, new archetypes. Like I said, they push out a main box or a mini box every 3 weeks or so now. So, I mean, literally 2 months ago, I thought Samurai was the best deck, and then now you can't even play Samurai on ladder because there's 6 new decks that are better than it is. So the only thing that kind of frustrates me when it comes to, like, keeping it fresh is the amount of cards they keep rotating out of the card trader. I know there's cards that were there in the past that I don't even have access to anymore because they just push them out to bring out new ones. Other than that, I don't. I mean, if you do, the only thing that can be frustrating is trying to grind out your heroes to get them to higher levels. But I mean, if you just sit there, they gave auto duel to us for a reason. So just sit there and auto duel on your free time. That's what I try to do. So I don't think it's good.
Speaking of cards that are no longer available, okay. So I've been playing since day one release of Duel Links. Whatever. I trained Yami Yugi up to like level 40, and back in the day, it was so hard to get coins to buy things from the card trader that I sold off Dark Magic Attack because Dark Magician was straight up trash. And then they released Paradox Brothers with 3-star demotion, and all of a sudden, Dark Magician is amazing. They released Mokuba with Ancient Rules. They released Arcana with all the Dark Magician support, and I grind all of these up. And I was like, okay, I'm building the Dark Magician deck. I get to the last card, literally 19 cards, get to the 20th card, and I was like, where the heck's my Dark Magic Attack? I sold it, and there's no way to get it back. I don't know. At least let me buy it for like gems or like way more money than they gave me for it. I'm a little bit grumpy about that. So as a caveat, I do agree that card trader cards should come back. I know they try to give it to you with EX jewels, but that's not really practical for getting a play set. I think they just need to be more frequent with their rotation on that. Yeah, the cards that you can only get one of, that's kind of dumb that you can get rid of it and there's no way back in. Like, even if you pay money, it's a pay-to-play app, basically, and they don't allow that.
I couldn't even imagine having access to 3 of some of these cards you only get one of.
Oh, I know. Yeah, there's a good reason for it to be like Dark Magic Attack only at 1 back in 3-star demotion days. That would have been wild. Just Harpy's Feather Duster every turn. I'm just saying give everybody equal access. So that's my caveat is I'm agreeing. I'm saying everybody should have equal access to cards. Yeah, and I'm not saying that people who pay extra money shouldn't have better cards. I agree with that. I'm just saying make them all available for everybody.
Yeah, I wish they had some sort of like exchange system where like if you turn cards in, because I know they have like the batch convert through the card trader to give you gems and gold and all that, but I wish that they had like a way to where you could like spend gold or spend gems like you said and make cards that you like haven't gotten as a drop. Like I remember I was trying to get anti-magic arrows from Arcana for so long and I couldn't get it, and so it was like I feel like they should have some sort of exchange system to like allow you to get like drop cards, but at the same time, I mean, again, I couldn't imagine someone having like 3 Dark Magic Attack or 3 Dark Magic Curtain. Like that would just be
3 Destiny Draw, 3 Malicious from Aster. That'd be crazy.
Yeah. They would have to enforce like some sort of cap on that stuff. Like, oh, there's only one in the game, so you only can have one.
Yeah, that is one thing I really like about Duel Links is they can release powerful cards like that outside of boxes and make it so you can only obtain one. So it's not like a limited or ban list or anything like that. It's just a limitation set by the game, and I think that's really good for it. I kind of wish they would have done that with Rose Lover and Como Shrumo. Maybe only make 1 or 2 available of each, either or, and that kind of would have. I mean, Sylvans would have still been relevant, right?
With 1 Kumashrumo and 1 Rose Lover, I don't think so.
Oh, no. I mean, like 1 or 2. Like, if you could have, like, 2 Rose Lovers and 1 Komashrumo, or 2 Komashrumo, 1 Rose Lover, something like that.
I mean, the deck would be relevant because of the ability to restart. I mean, it gives you a shot at going from a brick hand to a good hand, so, I mean, maybe it would be, but it definitely wouldn't be a Tier 1 deck.
I mean, it wouldn't be. I mean, I think it's a little bit higher than Tier 1 right now, Sylvans.
I mean, every tier list, there's no tier 0 deck in the
Yeah.
apparently in the community's opinion. Not like Cyber Angels was when it
No,
was at
I
full
agree. It's not as bad as Cyber Angels, but I think it's yeah. Anyway, we're rambling a little bit, but that's today's episode. So if you enjoyed the content and you'd like to hear more from us, please let me know in the comment section down below what you'd like to hear us talk about in the future. Maybe you'll see a little bit of more collaboration between me and him. It's always a fun time playing Yu-Gi-Oh with this guy. So any closing comments, Pizzy?
If you guys want to do well in the last chance qualifier for Worlds, I highly recommend grinding out and getting Sylvans. Nothing's going to happen to the deck, and in reality, it's not that hard to build it. It's easily the cheapest deck to build in the Big Four, so just auto-duel, get gems by leveling characters up and just invest them in that pack, and you'll do well, I promise.
Yeah, there's no point in going and trying to win with your tier -17 deck just because they're the cards you like. Sometimes it's necessary to play a tier deck in order to do well. So if you want to do well, play the best deck.
Oh, I do have one more comment though.
Oh, okay.
My dark horse deck for Worlds is definitely Gladiator Beast. I've been playing it nonstop on ladder, and I have like at least an 85% win percentage with it. I just don't lose. It's insane.
The jury's out on that.
I'll record it. I'll show it to you.
I want to see. Anyway, that's all we got for today. I hope you guys have an awesome day. Later.